Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to take the chair for the first item on the agenda. Following the changes to the terms of reference of the different committees, this committee is now being renamed the Community Services Committee, and we need to reconfirm the chair and deputy chair. Councillor Kevin Taylor is the chair and he's happy to continue. Councillor Jill Cleave is the deputy chair and happy to continue. Can we just vote that we are happy for them to continue in position, just to get this one out of the way? Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. In which case, I'll hand over to Councillor Taylor for the rest of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone, and for everyone watching online. Can I accept any apologies, please? I think we just have Councillor Wall.
The Wall, yes.
I don't believe that item 3, I don't believe there are any declarations of interest. Does anyone have any? No. Item 4, I don't think there are any written requests of dispensation for disclosable pecuniary interest as far as I'm aware. So therefore we have no need to grant any requests for dispensation. And I believe item 6, there is no public participation either. Item 7, to approve the draft open minutes of the additional general purposes committee meeting held on the 19th of August 2020, which has already been circulated. Are we okay to approve the minutes? Can we vote on that, please? Or
Yeah, that's everyone.
thank you. Item 8, to adopt the draft notes of subcommittee group meetings reporting to the Community Services Committee. 8.1, the website, social media and newsletter panel meetings held on the 8th of September and 6th of October 2020. Can we approve those, please? Thank you. 8.2, to approve the climate change emergency panel meeting held on the 7th of October 2020. Thank you very much. And 8.3, to approve the market forum meetings held on the 21st of August and the 2nd of October 2020. Thank you. Item 9, budget review. To review the budget progress for the current financial year, can I hand over to the Deputy Town Clerk, please, to give us a review on the budget, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to start by a quick review of the management accounts to date. So we're halfway through the current year. I'll share my screen. Just bear with me. So hopefully you can now see this. The management accounts were circulated, obviously as part of the appendices. Just to make a few points, the point of this is really to see how we're doing through the current year. And as in my management accounts review, the key things to note here are that the Town Council, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions and lockdown that have happened to date, the big impact has been on the Town Council's income. So you can see from this side of the diagram that we are now very heavily reliant on the precept for our income for the current financial year. And where we would normally see a bigger share of income coming from the markets, that has obviously been impacted by the fact that the markets were curtailed during the lockdown period, and going forward we are not receiving the level of income that we would have done otherwise. If we look across on the expenditure side, you can see that operational and administrative expenses form nearly half of the total expenditure year to date. Civic expenditure, this little green segment here, is considerably smaller than it would normally be, obviously because of the curtailment of any civic events so far this year, again because of the coronavirus restrictions. The next biggest area of expenditure is on this cemetery. And the other aspect here is you can see the initiatives, projects and grants section, this green section, year to date is relatively small. Grant payments will go out in the next couple of months, so that will grow. Just very quickly, looking at, I appreciate there are a lot of figures here, but some of the highlights, or if you like, the things where this is very much emphasised here, you can see that the Market and Christmas Festival was budgeted to generate over 17,000 of income, and to date we've only got 7,000 of that, so that's a considerable drop. Interest on investments, although it's showing a smaller amount at the moment, that's really a timing issue because of quarterly dividend income and some things like that. So the main drop off here has been really to do with the market income. Just looking down on expenditure, a big difference here has been the year-to-date expenditure on operational and administrative expenses compared to what we'd budgeted, and a big portion of that was going to be the external maintenance work that was due to take place on the town hall. So because that has had to be delayed, then that is to be expected that we've got an underspend there. But that will carry forward into either later this year or next year, so the money will still be spent at some point. Other things here are that, again, as I alluded to in the diagram, the civic expenditure is substantially below budget because of the lack of civic events. The reason the cemetery budget is the cemetery actuals are over budget relates to some delayed work on ground maintenance and also for some equipment that was carried over from last year. So again, actually that budget deficit is actually to be expected. So just looking at this bottom line, generally, there are no concerns in as much as the budget the loss of income has been offset by the underspends, and really there is nothing untoward in the figures to date to report on at this point. I would just say I appreciate that this committee is not the finance committee, so this isn't your main focus, but I think some of the summary pages in the management accounts that you all have access to, for example, this page can clearly show some differences between the current year and last year. So you can see here that the market income last year at this point was over 100,000, and our income this year is 13,000. That does include the district council share. So again, if you look at the expenditure, we would have expected to have given 42,000 to the district council at this point, and we've only given them 5,600. So, but overall, we have obviously lost a substantial proportion of income from the markets. The other big differences here are the drop off here really in terms of operational and administrative expenses, again relates to the lack of spending, if you like, on the town hall maintenance that was part of the 5-year programme of maintenance. But as I've said, this will be required to be spent at some point going forward. Unless any councillors have got any specific questions about the management accounts, then I've got no more to report on it at this time.
Does anyone have any questions for the Deputy Town Clerk? No? Okay, thank you very much. And can we move on to item 9.2 about budget proposal, first draft Appendix C then, please?
Thank you. My objective this evening is not to go through line by line.
Okay. That's fine then. Okay. So there are no further questions, so we can move on to item 10 then. Okay.
No, I just wanted to give a quick overview, really, of the approach that was put together in creating this first draft. Oh, sorry, I've shared the wrong screen again. Bear with me. Apologies for this. Right. We'll get there eventually. Here we go. Right. The point I want to raise here are really that this is very much a first draft, so we're in a position where we need to consider what this committee's budget requirements will be for the forthcoming year. The process will be that the spending committees can consider their requirements. These need to be fed through in the next month initially, to then for us to be in a position where the finance committee can review the budget at their meeting in November. So following on from that, the committees have all got an opportunity, and councillors all have an opportunity to feed requirements in for a further review by the finance committee, where the final draft will be reviewed in January 2021, in order for town council to approve, hopefully, the recommendation by the finance committee at that point. And this ties in with the timescales, whereby the district council requires the precept request to be submitted by the end of January for them to include it in their budget, and obviously in the council tax demands that then get sent out later in the year. Just generally some principles on how this draft has been pulled together, and just some headline observations to make. You'll see that there are various assumptions I've had to make. One of them being that I cannot get an update on the council tax base as things stand. The district council have only just started to work on that, and I've checked with them. They won't be able to give me any updated figures until next month at the earliest, but typically it will be in December when they can confirm that. So this figure here, the tax base, I've just assumed it is the same as we've had for the current financial year. Another assumption, which isn't in any way intended to indicate a decision by town council, but I've assumed a 1.5% inflationary rise based on what happened this year. Again, that was purely just for the reasons of preparing this first draft. The combination of the tax base and the precept charge per bandy property gives us a total precept at this point calculated as 522,000, which is obviously slightly more than we've received this year, and that's purely down to the inflationary rise. Typically, we've seen over the last 10 years that the tax base increases due to development within the town boundaries. So we normally expect to get additional income from the precept purely by the tax base increasing, even if the actual charge per household is not raised. But if you notice that the total increase is still relatively small, 7,600. Some other things here at the moment, because we're not sure of what's going to happen going forward. A lot of the figures for the proposed budget for next year are based on the actual agreed budget for this year. So, for example, something like the market and Christmas festival, I've just carried that forward based on this year's events. We wouldn't expect to receive that, but let's hope that by this time next year, markets will be operating again more fully, and the income will come back. But that potentially is something that we could reconsider. Other changes here, the interest on investments, because of the economic impact of the coronavirus, there has been indication that some of our long-term investments are unlikely to necessarily return the same levels that we would have hoped to receive. So that is a cautious estimate that we may lose some of the income next year from our long-term investment. You will see that there is a budget deficit here. In other words, the expected income is not as great as the expenditure. So currently with this draft, there would be a deficit of £245,200, which would have to come from reserves. This is less than the current year. Again, there's still a long way to go in the current year to know exactly what's going to happen by the end of this year. Just some of the points looking down expenditure. The reason for the increase in the operational and administrative expenditure is that a lot of the work that had been put in this year's budget for town hall maintenance will be carried forward to next year. And there is some additional expenditure now this year on the internal maintenance that we'll come on to later in this meeting. The cemetery expenditure is showing a decrease. As I said, I mentioned earlier, this additional expenditure that had been carried forward from last year, so that is to be expected. The other significant change in next year's draft budget is this decrease in initiatives, projects and grants. Part of that is that in this year's total, we had a figure for an initial capital grant to the Fred Winter Centre, which was a one-off grant that won't be required again next year. So you can see that expenditure is budgeted at the moment to fall based on the current year, but the overall requirement for funding from reserves is less. As I've spoken before, given the events that have overtaken what's happened this year, I currently would not expect the deficit this year to be anywhere near the 295,000 originally budgeted. So the good news from that respect is that there will be more left in reserves to pay again towards a budget deficit next year, if that indeed is what happens. As I said, in terms of how the budget is being prepared, it's either based on this year's budget or taking account of this year's actuals. If there are any requirements for specific projects going forward, then councillors are asked to feed those through. Obviously, any costed or estimated information around that would be helpful. One of the areas I know that has been spoken about that's fed through is from the climate change emergency panel. There is currently £10,000 in the budget for this year which is still to be spent. So potentially that money could either be carried forward or a similar amount could be budgeted for again next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deputy Town Clerk. And I presume no one else has any further questions. Councillor Cleave first, and then Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you. It will probably come to you at a separate time, Phil, but with the new Youth Town Council, they will be looking for a budget. Will that just go to the Finance Committee after they've discussed it?
Yeah, as you sort of see from the figures there I've shown you, the way the last few years the Town Council budget has been put together, and because of the level of reserves that the Town Council has, we've been effectively running a budget deficit. So any additional, without a specific decision to either raise the precept substantially or generate further income, which in better circumstances maybe we could have done through the hire of the town hall, which is obviously difficult in current circumstances. Effectively, any requirement for additional funds, as things stand, would mean a further draw on reserves. So there are reserves available to that. If the youth council require a budget, it could be accommodated within the current reserves. So if they either feed that back through this committee, this committee still has an opportunity then to recommend that to the Finance Committee in the next 3 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Chair. I did put my blue hand up in participants. Sorry. Anyway, two things. Firstly, okay, so I can't believe I've been a councillor for so long and didn't realise this, but perhaps other councillors don't know either. But until 2013, the government subbed every district council in, so anybody that was on benefits or universal credit that didn't pay full council tax, the government subbed it to the district councils. But since 2013, the district council have to fund the difference. But interestingly enough, it doesn't affect the precept that comes to the parishes and the town councils. So that's a good thing for us. But the question I wanted to ask Phil was, do we take into account the amount of houses that, are you given a kind of a rough estimate of the houses that will be occupied within the next financial year? And do you base your forecast on that? Yeah, that's just a question, really.
Yeah, the figure shown in the budget, the tax base, that effectively is the figure that the district council feed through to us as their baseline figure of how much, if you like, or the number of Band D properties that they are saying will be inhabited next year. So what I was sort of alluding to earlier is that if you look back through the history of the tax base, that figure has increased over the last 10 years because of the development that's gone on around the town. As you said, there used to be a council tax reduction grant that the district council did give some money to the town council as part of that, but because they were no longer getting the money from central government, they've gradually phased that out. So this year is the first year we haven't received that.
First year.
Yeah, it had been reducing over the last, I think you said since 2013. So they've gradually reduced it. So effectively last year we only got about £3,000 anyway, but we've had nothing at all this year. So the total precept that we're getting, because the development has increased, that in some respects has offset the council tax reduction grant that we no longer get. Town council has been very fortunate that the total precept received has increased year on year without having to raise the precept up until last year.
Thank you. And Chair, may I just are we going to do 9.5 and 9.6? Do we have responsibility to review the cemetery fees and the allotment fees? Because you said earlier we were going on to the town clerk's open report. Do we actually do 9.5 and 9.6?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Howe, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk. I think that was a really good overview. Are we expecting a separate listing of the individual budget items which apply to community services? Is that something that you have on your to-do list, or is that?
Yeah, I will give you I can give you a different version of the budget at some point.
I mean, brilliant.
If you like it very simplistically, I think I put that in my report or summary, that the one obvious page in the management accounts and indeed the budget, which follows a similar format, is that there is a page for civic expenditure, which obviously falls outside the remit of this committee. But as things stand, in the current format of the budget, which is based on last year's format, basically there is probably something on every page that this committee would have to look at. So I'm conscious that it would be a lot easier if you just had the subset, which will still be a large part of the overall budget, but certainly I do intend to circulate something that just includes those items.
I take it changing these to fit the new committee structure would be a lot of hassle for you. to change these individual sort of budget heads?
Well, I think my intention will be to try and, if we do anything different to give different formats to the other committees, will still be to retain this format, because it sort of ties in nicely with the format of the management accounts. But
you get to compare it to last year as well. Exactly.
If we just come up with a completely new format, then all the comparisons going forward would be lost. So having said that, it is possible to, I'm sure as you were with Excel, to link templates and things together. So even if I come up with a new format, I can pull the figures from this same base data. So it will just be different versions of the same.
I think that would be really useful. And my last question is that 705 you've got for street furniture in initiatives, projects and grants.
Yeah.
Where has that number come from?
Okay, so up until this year, certainly for the last 4 or 5 years, we've basically only had a budget in there for, if you like, dog bins and bike racks. So that figure is based on a number. Well, let's think. If we go back a couple of years ago, the town council, if we get residents requesting further bins to be installed, the district council basically won't put those in. It's down to the town council to add those in. So that charge was based on an annual budget of acquiring 5 new bins and the charges by the district council for emptying those during the course of the year. Last year, the figure was much higher because we acquired the bus stop on Trinity Mead. So, but generally, if you like, it's a very small budget. If council are looking to either put more benches in or something like that, then obviously that is one area that would need to be reviewed and raised.
Possibly an item that's more relevant for our next agenda item about designated reserves, because these things don't really, they're not planned super in advance. We can't tell you that we want to put in a bus shelter next year, but it's like if the opportunity arises, and I saw on social media this week that I think there were someone commenting about the bus stop that we did put in this year, about the need for some other bus stops. So potentially an item to have more of a designated reserve, which we can draw down from when the need arises, but we have no current plans to do that next year currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Voss.
Yeah, so this must have been very challenging, Deputy Town Clerk. Putting together a budget at any time is challenging, but I recognise that this one is full of a lot of ifs, buts and maybes. And come January, we may have a clearer view as to where we're heading in terms of opening up or even possibly further restrictions, in which case, would you be thinking about updating the budget or running with the broad budget as it is now, but reflecting in the actuals and monthly updates? How do you propose to deal with that situation? Because the first third of the year could quite easily be wiped out in terms of revenues, apart from precept, of course.
Yeah. As you see from this first draft budget, it is very much meant as, if you like, just to get something out there. So there are a lot of assumptions in that. You will see that there are figures in there for the actual year-to-date details, which are fed through from the management accounts. So those will be exactly the same as you see in your management accounts. And the budget document is set up in such a way that I can refresh that every month alongside the management accounts, so that when we come to review this again at the end of the year, we will have a 9-month view of what's happened during the current year. Some of the figures, I've got formulas in that are based on how things have progressed based on the year-to-date actuals. So those, again, would automatically reflect what's happened in the next 3 months. But as things currently stand, it doesn't look as though we're going to get any significant lessening of the restrictions. So I keep alluding to the fact whether, for example, we've lost income. If you take the example of the town hall, we've actually given back more in refunds this year than we've taken in fees. But admittedly, the expenditure on the town hall is less than we'd anticipated. But I say the budget document, I can update it month on month between now and when we issue the final draft, which will be reviewed in January. At that point, if an assumption, I have notes on each line as to what the assumptions are if they're significantly different to the current year. So as part of that review, if councillors sort of feel that an assumption to, think that we're going to get the level of market income that we thought we would get under the current contract, if that is deemed to not be a valid assumption, then it's relatively easy for me to adjust that figure in January to say, well, having gone 9 months through this year, we really ought to take the view that we're only going to get a third of the income, which is what's happened over the last 3 months, for example. So, yes, this is a working document. It's I have spent a lot of time, but getting it to a point where it's relatively easy to manipulate things now. So it's not a case of if there are some quite drastic changes that have to be put in place, it's not a case of almost like scrapping it and starting again. It can be tweaked. Yes, I appreciate that other views of it, other formats of it would be helpful. Obviously, a key thing that will happen in December is we will get confirmation of the tax base, which then gives us a very clear idea of, if you like, the guaranteed income we will get next year, which essentially is the precept. As I've already talked about, the last few years, the town council has run a deficit. So in that sense, much of the expenditure of the town council is covered by the precept, and any deficit is taken from reserves. Now, the town council is very fortunate with the level of reserves currently. If we were to decide that next year we're not going to get as much income from the town hall or the market, that wouldn't necessarily stop the town council from being able to do what it needs to do because of the level of reserves that we currently have. But as other people quite rightly point out, you can only spend the reserves once. So once they've gone, there has to be a plan in place to replenish those reserves and carry them forward. I know we'll come on to it a bit, but the other consideration there is when Councillor Howe referred to considering a designated reserve, it's obviously important to realise that to create that designated reserve, that money has to come from somewhere. So in the absence of anything else, it will initially come from the general reserve. So as I say, I can talk a little bit more about that when we move on to that item. But
just in terms of the timings now, it's beholden to new committees to come to you as a committee or even as individual councillors with proposals for expenditure. So if we were looking, for example, at the new town centre task and finish group, it may well be that out of that, a requirement for expenditure, which clearly will not have been there before because it's not happened before, comes along. So we would have to get to you pretty quickly with proposals to make your life easier so that those can be moved into the budget process, certainly well before you want to finalise that before the end of the year. So you're in a position to finalise and agree the budget by the end of January, I'm guessing.
Yeah, just to give an example, I mentioned the climate change project. That was the £10,000 that's in this year's budget for that was, if you like, a pot of money that council requested to be set aside for climate initiatives. As yet, that money hasn't been spent on something specific, but if you like, for example, you referred to initiatives that may come from the town centre group. Again, at this point, what I would say to councillors is if you feel fairly certain that a project is going to happen, but it's very difficult at this point to get actual costs, then it is important at least to identify a ballpark sum of money that we can then include in the budget, and whether that goes into the budget as a specific item, or whether, as Councillor Howe alluded to, it goes in as part of a designated reserve that can be drawn on if required. Then at least that way we get figures in the budget so that we know we will have a better idea by the end of the year with the budget how much is left in the pot, if you like, the general reserve pot, to spend on things that haven't been earmarked for other purposes. But I also feel that the more we can, when we look at the reserves, the more that there is a great deal of good to come out of making this very transparent as to what the pots of money the council hold are for. Because just to take a general figure that the council have an awful lot of reserves, well, when you actually look at it and see why those reserves are being held, it then becomes more apparent that, you know, there isn't this huge pot of money just sitting there waiting to be necessarily be used on whatever it needs to be spent on.
Very good. Thank you very much for all of that. Very good.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very much following on from Councillor Voss's comments that we're trying to put together a budget when actually we don't quite know what the situation is going to be next year. But from a committee point of view, really we should be assuming that next year will be a normal year, and all the projects and initiatives that we might have in mind will go ahead, and we should put that amount in the budget accordingly. And if things go pear-shaped and we can't do them, we can just carry it forward to next year. But we must assume at the moment that for spending purposes, next year will be a normal year and we need to budget accordingly. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree with that. As I said, I think the big thing here is that because the council budget indicates that we will be using reserves to fund a deficit, then I don't think it's disingenuous to ask for a precept set at a level similar to what we currently have, or even increased for inflation or whatever it is, because it's not as though we're you know, by going down that route, it's not as though we are taking a lot of money from local residents that is just going to then end up in a pot for a whole series of projects that don't actually happen. But having said that, it's important to realise that spending as usual, if you like, as what you said, will still result in a normal year as things stand in the town council having to draw on reserves to fund them.
Yep, fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Fradgley.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a very brief comment about what Kate said right at the beginning of this discussion. With the new houses, we just get one figure a year from the district. We don't get a rolling figure. We have to wait for the increase in those houses to happen at the next financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. Item, Deputy Town Clerk, are you okay to carry on with going? I know we hadn't planned to do this, sorry.
Okay,
but,
thank you. Yeah.
Are you okay to
Sure.
carry on? We may as well carry on with this. So it's
Fine.
9.3 designated reserve requirements.
Okay, thank you. Yes, this is a new requirement. So as a result of the new committee structure, one of the changes in the terms of reference was that the committees can have a request a designated reserve, which gives them then the ability to fund new projects or fund additional requirements that may appear next year, which hadn't been anticipated at this point in time. The advantage of that is it will speed up decision making, because as things have been done in the past, effectively once the budget is set, if there were any requirements for additional expenditure next year that weren't in the budget, then the committee would have to identify those, submit a request for a budget varment to finance that would then agree that varment. So having said that, this is a new process, so it's very difficult to advise you on what the designated reserve should be, because if you like, there's nothing there, and whatever goes in the designated reserve will initially be taken from the general reserve, or will have to be transferred from a different designated reserve that currently exists. So I would say that the sort of things you should be considering for that are if you like, or a ballpark figure for things that are you know, possible projects that you may consider next year, which will need to be brought forward in more detail, or a as I've sort of advised, I think one of the other groups, so if you've got a situation where there is a budget, a figure in this year's budget that is unlikely to be spent, it would also make sense to me if it is believed that the committee thinks that money is still required going forward, then to recommend that any budget surplus this year is automatically put into a designated reserve for the committee for next year, because typically that money will be required next year. It's not a case of just dreaming up pots of money to just keep holding there for non-specific purposes. So it's very much intended that if there is something that any of the councillors in this committee feel that this committee is likely to require to spend money on next year, then the designated reserve gives you the option of being able to do that at a later date once the detail has been finalised.
Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk. 9.4, review of the Town Hall tariffs for 21-22. I presume everyone's looked and seen the appendix.
Can I just perhaps give a bit of background on this? It is now the responsibility of this committee as part of the budget process to review the tariffs and the fees. As it's very difficult, if you like, in the current situation to objectively review town hall tariffs with a view either to increasing the level of income or increasing the number of events. What I would suggest at this point is really that councillors are aware that this committee can just say, in current circumstances, we have reviewed the fees and believe they should remain unchanged, or we have reviewed the fees and there should be an inflationary rise, whatever. There is not necessarily a requirement to go through and if you like, come up with a completely different fee structure or whatever. And I think in current circumstances, it would be very difficult to justify a reason to do that at this time.
Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk. Councillor Voss.
Yeah, I mean, I have got some views on this, and I don't want to take a lot of time. I think the worst thing you can do is not increase, because then you're just holding over for an increase in 2 or 3 years' time. And this is a commercial activity. There's a difference, I think, we have to establish between charitable, pro bono, non-commercial. There's a world of difference there, and we do need to take a serious look at this and how we structure it. So I'm prepared to have a look at that. Councillor Warrenhouse and myself have done quite a bit of work already on this pre-lockdown in terms of comparisons and opportunities. And it may be next year we don't do any weddings at all. Who knows what's going to happen? It may be because there's a lack of activity this year that when the world opens up again on April the 1st, we get inundated with inquiries. And we need to be prepared for that and to be prepared to charge the appropriate market rate for a unique, and that's a one only facility. This is the Stratford Town Hall, is the only one of its kind in the whole world. And we should recognise that uniqueness in the facility with all its limitations and constraints. So we need to get this right, because if and when we do open up again, and I recognise there are certain nuances there, I'm not naive, that we need to be charging the kind of money that will enable us to recover some of our losses from this year, but to match other commercial wedding providers locally and regionally. So I'm prepared to have a look at that and to take a serious commercial view of it.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, just clarity really here. On the basis that it's the Civic Heritage and Events Committee that is now responsible for town hall events and income and expenditure, well, the income, shouldn't this particular item be dealt with by that particular committee and not the Community Services Committee?
I thought we decided, if I may, Chair, I thought we decided that when it came to the commercial element, it would be part of the communities. When it
That
was
that was
the
my
kind of civic
interpretation of it.
element, it would be part of the events, but the commercial element would be part of communities. Did everyone else think that, or am I dreaming that one up?
That's how I'd interpreted it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I was just checking the reason I've sort of put it in here is that if you look at the terms of reference for the Community Services Committee, it does, where does it say it? Well, it certainly talks about the review of cemetery and tranquility garden fees. Actually, it's talking about it's talking about expenditure on the town hall as a responsibility of this committee. Maybe perhaps I've maybe misinterpreted the requirement. It also talks about the undertaking specific reviews in accordance with professional advice and things. So yeah, perhaps the actual income side in terms of the fees, maybe that should be the other committee. This committee is responsible, if you like, for the expenditure side on the town hall. I do know in discussions in the last few weeks following the agreement to change the committee structure that it was my understanding that the Civic Heritage and Events Committee would, for example, with an item we're going to come on to, the pro bono use of the town hall, I think it was the other committee was going to determine what dates and the number of events that were available to be allowed, and then this committee would be the one that then liaised with local organisations to actually determine what those events and things would be. So apologies if this item has actually come to the wrong committee, then we will obviously take it to the Civic Heritage and Events for them to consider the tariffs for the town hall.
Yeah, that's what I do. I just think it would be wrong for this committee to set the tariff for a wedding, because I think that's something that the Civic Heritage and Events Committee need to look at and decide upon. Yeah.
Councillor Rolfe, do you wish to speak?
Yes, following on from what Councillor Voss said, can I make a proposal that whichever committee this sits in, we review the charges for the town hall? Can I suggest maybe February next year? I mean, I'm not sure whether that's too late or too soon, but I think things are at a standstill now, I think, till at least Christmas, if not longer. And perhaps we ought to review the charges maybe soon after the first meeting in January, that we look at we review the charges again. But again, we don't know which committee it's sitting on.
Do we have a seconder for that proposal?
Can I just comment, sorry, on
Yes,
that
Richard.
before it goes
Yes,
forward?
Councillor Voss.
It doesn't really matter when you do it, but once you do it, you need to repeat that annually, and you need to hold to that. So, I mean, there was a thought at one time that you always reviewed your tariff well before Valentine's Day, so that people who on Valentine's Day asked the question, popped the question, knew what they were looking for, and that would sort of imply, historically in hotels, we would review our tariffs in September, make sure they were publicly available from the end of the year, January, and people had them in time for Valentine's Day. But, you know, things haven't been conducted in the same sort of commercial way. So it doesn't matter as long as we're prepared and we don't get hamstrung by old tariffs. So I would say.
So would you say January was the right time?
I would say that would be the latest, would be my view, to do it. So we're prepared for, traditionally, Valentine's. After that, you get people inquiring about events, don't you?
When is our next meeting of this committee?
8th of December.
We could put some proposals forward then. It's difficult to get a view. I don't think it matters really whether we think there's going to be weddings or not last year, and things are in a state of flux. We want to make sure that our tariffs reflect the right charge for the venue and for the various types of users we have. I think that's quite important.
Okay,
Otherwise, we're always trading.
Can I change my proposal that we re-look at this and the cemetery and the allotments on our 8th of December meeting?
Good one.
Are you still seconding that, Councillor Cleve? Yeah, yeah. Can everybody vote on that then, please?
Oh.
If I just, while
Thank
that's happening, can I just make the
Thank
point?
you.
Because of the timescales, obviously, normally a change in tariffs would potentially have an impact on the budget, but I think given the current situation, and really reflecting what's happened in previous years, the budget estimates of income from the town hall next year will be based on the current year tariffs. And obviously, if the tariffs are changed in the meantime, then that would have an impact going forward. But because of the situation, because of the timing factor, there isn't enough time to get a new tariff structure in place and then change the budget accordingly. So
it would be a positive impact.
Indeed, yes. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just make a point about which committee? I did understand that this was a committee, and it may be my fault, that was going to be looking from a more commercially proactive standpoint at some of these positions. So I've possibly misunderstood that.
I certainly, if I may, Chair, certainly knew that the cemetery and the allotments were going to be.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Kate. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But I'm having doubts about the town hall.
There's a lot. I mean, I think it's not the fact that we might decide upon tariffs. The events and the type of events and the dates and all that is clearly for the events group, civic. But I understood this is where we would sort of put together the commercial basis, blunt terms, of tariffs and agree those, and they, will be. So that's what I understood, but maybe wrong.
Councillor Cleve and then Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Chair. Could we also look, if this is the right committee to look at the tariffs, because looking at the tariffs right now, we obviously have organisations with charitable status, private commercial government agencies, and those are the two tariffs. Could we potentially, in the same way as we have for burials, look at obviously a charity status, but then residents of the town having a different rate to out-of-towners, so to speak, because residents do pay council tax that do go towards the precepts. It would be nice if they get something. It is at the end of the day their town hall, just something. It doesn't, just a discount from the other full. Just as a thought. Same with weddings. I think Councillor Voss, you've mentioned in the past local people having a different rate for wedding ceremonies as people who are coming into town for them. It would be nice to be able to give the residents something from here. Something we can look at.
You actually would start off top down. You would say, for example, it's £100,000 if you live out of town and you're coming in from Tokyo to have your wedding. But if you live in Old Town, it's £99,999, for example. Yeah, but I mean, you get the point. Yeah. That's the way you would start it off.
Yeah, but and that's not just for weddings, though. For all hire, for all
across
hire,
the piece,
to give the residents something back. In addition to charities, obviously the charities would have a better rate than the residents, but the residents still a better rate than people outside the town. Just something that if we could look at that.
Very valid point, Councillor Cleve. I think that's a good idea. Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Just on, just on which committee, I think it was always envisaged that the civic, mayoral and heritage and events would take that task on, and then within their kind of terms of references to identify suitable income streams for the town hall. So I think that directly links back to tariff setting.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Fradgley. Councillor Fradgley.
I think she's saying she doesn't want to speak.
Right, okay. Okay. Item 9.5 then, to review of the cemetery and tranquility garden fees. Does anyone have any comments on the appendix provided, or are we in a similar situation here with regards to the town hall tariffs? Do we review them again in January?
I think that was part of
Yeah, I did.
Councillor Ross'
Part of my
Yeah.
proposal was
Okay.
both of
Oh,
those.
yeah, I thought it was just the one, Kate, sorry.
No, I think
9.4,
I did
9.5,
say both.
9.6,
Yeah,
we'll review at the next meeting then.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Councillor. Councillor Taylor, sorry. Just regarding item 9.6,
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful if this committee did tonight review the report prepared by the civic officer because of some concerns over the allotment. So it's not really just necessarily the setting of the fees, but just some points raised in that report. It would be helpful if councillors have any opinion or any feedback from this meeting tonight.
Okay. I presume everybody's read the report. Does anyone have any comments on Appendix G? Councillor Voss and Councillor Cleave.
I think Councillor Cleave just got her hand up in front
All
of
right,
me.
okay.
No,
Go for it. No?
No, I was just going to propose that we accept the recommendations. I was happy. So if you've got another comment.
Well, I was just going to say, very much in line with what you'd said before about looking for the residents, and particularly in this area, we should do as much as possible.
Yeah.
There's a larger element to it here than just providing an allotment. This is an area where we would like to provide a facility and links into well-being and support, I would suggest. So we should look at, could we do at least this, if not more, to enhance the allotment and to make sure that it's set up properly so that the residents can get the best out of it. That would be my sentiment.
Councillor Cleave?
Yes, well, I was going to say I propose that we accept the recommendations, but I'd like to add what Councillor Voss said, if we can add those into the recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Coles, or do we have a seconder for Councillor Cleave's proposal?
I'm happy to second and just add my voice to the what Councillor Voss said, that certainly until you've actually got an area you can grow stuff, it seems a little unreasonable to raise the fees. So we ought to engage in talking with them and seeing what can be done to improve, make sure they work properly.
Thank you, Councillor Coles.
Can I just say at this point, this also is a ward issue. So I, with permission of this committee, will involve Councillor Warren Howells as well. If we are going to move forward, I think it would be helpful if she was fully involved. And I'm sure she would want to be as well.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Item 10, the Town Clerk's Open Report. 10.1, to consider fundraising for the T3 Foundation. This is an incentive which was highlighted to me by Table Tennis England. It's a splinter group within their organisation that actually deal directly with care homes, and what they've actually done is redesigned the game completely, so it has a completely different table to enable people within care homes with dementia to actually sit at the table and play a designated number of games. It's obviously looked at in table tennis itself is a great game for people who have dementia, and it's an incentive at the moment that we could get for a designated care home within Stratford through a crowdfunding exercise with the T3 organisation. So it would actually, I'd actually already said that I was prepared to do the crowdfunding for the equipment if we had a care home in Stratford that we think would be suitable to receive the equipment. Councillor Rolfe.
Yes, I was just about to ask that question. Do you have a care home in mind? There are quite a few, obviously, in the centre of Stratford, and presumably you would have to look at space available as well within that care home.
It is a much smaller. I think you're talking probably less than half the size of a normal table tennis table. It's been specifically designed to fit into much smaller spaces, and it is a seated game rather than a game that's standing up. So I don't have a designated care home at this present moment in time, but would be welcome for suggestions if anyone else if anyone can think of a relevant worthy cause. At the moment, we only needed to crowdfund for probably about £400 to get the unit, and I'm pretty confident I could get more than that. So we may be able to do more than one if we had a requirement. Councillor Rolfe.
Yeah, just going back to the care home itself, I mean, they might be willing to put some money into it themselves for that facility.
I mean, I can directly approach each care home in Stratford and see whether they're all interested, or if there's anyone interested before we make a further decision. If that, I think that's probably the most sensible route.
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any more questions on that project? Councillor Fradgley.
I just put my blue hand up. The care homes possibly are those which have a bit more space, or perhaps those which are run by sort of county might be interesting. I mean, we've got Briarscroft, which has a variety of people living there, some more active, some very active and some not so active. Melville House, that has quite a lot of space. We've got the new one in Arden Quarter and the new one going up onto the Marie Corelli site. So there are quite a few. I think somewhere like the Bentley is a possibility. It does have space, but it tends to have more people who are in more extremities.
Thank you, Councillor Fradgley. I think what I'll do is I'll approach them all and send them the details of the actual project and see what response we get back. Any more questions? No.
Item
I have both my blue hand and my real hand.
Your hand then, Philip. Sorry.
I'm just asking you, Chair, what's caused you to bring this to the council? What do you require of the council for this? Because if you're asking to fundraise, you could go off and do that now. Correct.
Yeah, I just brought it to council because it was involved with the Ping project initially, and I was advised that it should be brought to this committee. However, I have no problems. I can just, as you quite rightly said, I can start the crowdfunding and do it via.
I guess the question is who would then own that table, and whether it would have to come under our insurance that we have for Ping currently.
Well, even with Ping, we don't own any of the tables. Table Tennis England still own the equipment. So they, although they give us a grant, then the actual equipment is still owned by Table Tennis England.
But it's using our insurance, is that correct?
It does, yes, yeah.
I wonder whether the same would be applicable here, for example. I don't know.
It could, if the project went ahead through town council, yes, it would have to be covered, I would imagine, in the same way by our insurance, yes. But obviously, as you've quite rightly quoted, if town council choose not to want to pursue this through the council, then we can actually start. We could start the crowdfunding outside of the organisation.
Sorry, just to interject there. I think through my sort of conversations with the town clerk at various points, you know, I think there is a bit of an issue with sort of the town council fundraising for something, because we're you know, authoritative body. We can raise taxes to pay for something, and so if we want to do it, we should pay for it from the precept. And I think sort of fundraising should be kind of kept separate from that. But that's just my personal opinion.
Fine. Okay. Well, Councillor Rolfe.
On the other hand, wouldn't it be nice for the town council to be part of this? You know, that it is in our town. I know it's a fine balance, Councillor Howe, but it is also something that the town council are giving back and are being proactive.
Councillor Bradley. Sorry, Philip,
carry on.
No, carry on.
In which case, let's create a budget for it and pay for it ourselves. If
that's what I was just going to suggest, actually. If there is no need to do the crowdfunding exercise, that's how other groups outside of town councils, for example, finance these projects. However, if we choose to pursue it, then we could budget for it ourselves and pay for it ourselves. I mean, we're only talking, as I said, probably £400 for one set of equipment for one care home. Councillor Fradgley.
Thank you, Chair. I think that I wouldn't be object to perhaps one table, but if we're actually looking at trying to do increase the tables to a number of care homes, which I think would be a good idea, I'd like the town council to be involved in some way. If it can't do direct fundraising, it could actually do some support work, because we could afford one, but I'm not so sure with our, just having looked at our budget, whether we can actually take on endless purchases, no matter how good they are, because I do think we're actually going into a fairly difficult time. So I think if we agree to fund one, use that as the example, and then crowdfund on others.
I would agree with that. I wouldn't expect town council to continually buy.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we don't know yet whether we have anyone who is prepared to be involved with the project. So I think the first thing that I will do is actually approach all of the care homes in Stratford with the details of the project and see what response we get back.
Yeah. I like the project though.
Well, Councillor Cleave.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, we can talk back and forth right now about this, but I think the best thing to do is you actually approach all the care homes. If there's no interest, it's a non-starter in the first place, but if there is interest, then yes, we should support it. But I think, yeah, absolutely, I propose the first thing you do is approach all the care homes, and then we can make a decision from that point onwards. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, just picking up on the point that Councillor Howe raised, in that I don't think that the town council should be involved in any fundraising outside of the collection of the precept. It just doesn't sit right that we are competing with other organisations for money. So I'm quite happy that we put money aside for one, but there's a wider issue of what do we do if care homes want further care homes want a table, where's that get funded from? And I think we need to be clear that we funded one as a trial to see whether it was successful, but we can't get involved in funding lots more, nor are we going to get involved in doing fundraising, crowd fundraising to do it. Yeah.
I think in all fairness, it was only the intention to ever trial it as a one-off to see that if anyone accepts it. I think if any of the other care homes, so for example, every care home in Stratford wanted one, then I think what we would do there is work with the T3 project to actually work directly with the care homes, with possibly a little bit of work from myself, say for example, as a consultant in there, So I think it was only ever a suggestion to see whether it was acceptable for a one-off for town council. It was never any intention for them to buy a table for every care home in Stratford. But thank you very much. (10.2) to review the grant application process for the use of Town Hall.
Chair, if I may, just the regarding this item, what we're seeking councillors to consider is, because this committee, because this committee is now responsible for allocating free use of the town hall to local groups. That would previously have been done by the finance committee, and this is really just to point out that because of the current restrictions, nothing has happened so far in the current financial year to send forms out to local organisations for the pro bono use of the town hall going forward. So it's really whether this committee feels that we should proceed, but with a warning, if you like, to them that until things change, although we can encourage them to apply for free use, we can't guarantee that they can have it.
Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk. Do I have a proposal for us to continue with the current process then of the free use? Councillor Coles.
Sorry, yes, I propose that we do exactly as the Deputy Town Clerk suggests, and hopefully we can look forward to being able to make it available again, and at least get things lined up and ready to go when we can start doing more things and using the town hall as we would like to. I think it'd be better to be prepared and ready to go, with the caveat that obviously at the moment it would have to wait until the restrictions change.
Councillor Howe and Councillor Cleave.
I think we could probably simplify this. I think if someone's asking us for cash, having a high scrutiny as possible is probably, and so the questions on the existing application form. If someone wants to use the town hall for a couple of meetings, I think the process should be radically simplified. And I propose that I can, if the consensus is that it should be simplified and people agree with me, that I take that away and sort of present something back to the next meeting. It'll probably be digitized as well. And I'll work with the officers to get their opinions on that as well.
Okay, are we happy with Councillor Howe's proposal? Councillor Coles, are you okay for us to proceed? But do we have a seconder then for Councillor Howe's proposal? Thank you, Councillor Cleave. And would you like to comment on, so you have your blue hand up, Councillor Cleave?
Yeah, I was actually just going to say the same. I mean, again, it goes back to giving the residents more opportunities to use it if it's for they're not necessarily a charity, but a charitable reason, as opposed to a private hire. So it's, again, we need to work for the residents, and I think having a simplified version. So yeah, I second the simplified version.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Councillor Voss.
There was a comment made, I can't remember by which councillor at full council, when we talked about grants, that we needed to be, if not more diligent in terms of the grant application, that they needed to be in some way not more detailed. I can't remember, but there was definitely a comment made, wasn't there, about making sure that we were more precise or sharper in looking at detail. So whilst we don't want to make it difficult for local residents, we also need to make sure that we are properly managing the grants process and that we have proper, clear detail and requirements fit in. Now, I'm not saying whether this form is good or bad, but if I recall at the town council meeting, there was definitely a comment made about it.
Thank you, Councillor Voss. Councillor Fradgley.
The comment actually was made, I think, about the Stratford in Bloom grant, that it lacked specific detail. And I believe you, Councillor Voss, said that it would be very difficult to actually do. So I think a balance has to be struck there.
Councillor Howe.
I mean, yeah, this is about people coming to use the town hall. I don't think that needs to be really be complex. If you come around, if you ask me for 50 quid, I'm going to kind of interrogate you. But if you want to come around my house to have a cup of tea, then you know, more than welcome. The door's open. So I think we should adopt a similar mindset.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Any more comments on that, or can we move on to 10.4? Or 10.3, sorry, 10.3, to agree the cost to produce a green advent calendar as in Appendix I.
I have a brief update from Councillor Warren Howell. She did want to attend this evening but was unable to. She just basically gave a short overview. I'll just read that out to you now. She says, most of you probably know about the green advent calendar idea. This has been discussed at length in our website, social media and newsletter panel meetings, and I've emailed it previously for your input. To recap, however, the idea is to produce a green advent calendar with environmental and green tips behind each door. This will be posted on our town council website and also council's social media pages if so required. Every day of Advent, we would like to share a different tip, from help with food waste, recycling, and doing something positive. In the light of the fact we passed a climate emergency motion last year, this is an example of how we are looking to be environmentally friendly as possible. I have contacted Katie Morgan at The Decorative Painter about designing the image. Katie designed the Mayor's Christmas card last year. She has supplied 3 draft images to give us an idea of the picture we may like to use. These are in the appendices. Katie will send us a high resolution image. The cost for this will be £250. We will need a license to use and modify her work. That will be clever executed by Councillor Phil Howe, and she has agreed that this will cost £100. Katie admits she knows nothing about licenses, but this will enable us to add the doors and use the image elsewhere if we so wish, Christmas cards, for example. So even in the report, it does say the price is £450, but she has since come back and revised the offer to £250.
Any comments, or do we have a proposal to accept the cost?
Councillor Rolfe has a hand up.
Councillor Rolfe?
Brilliant idea, absolutely brilliant. Loving the pictures as well. I know Katie quite well, and she's yeah. I propose that we go ahead with this.
Do we have a second? Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Coles. Any other comments? Councillor Cleave?
Yeah, can I just check from a budget point of view, as it's a green advent calendar, will that come from the Green Committee? I can't remember which budget we actually talked about it coming from.
Phil, do you mind jumping in?
I thought we discussed earlier today that it would come from this committee's budget.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, what we said earlier is because of the various pots it could come from. I think because it is a specific initiative, my suggestion would be that we add a line specifically for this item in the budget under initiatives projects section. So then it's very transparent that we've added something into the budget for this year relating to a new initiative. And if that was to then continue going forward, there's no reason why it can't continue to be included in the budget in future years.
Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk. Councillor Voss.
And mentioned the 3 pictures, drawings. Are we picking them here, or is that picked by another committee?
I believe that will be by the website panel.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Voss.
Do we all have to agree with that, Chair?
Yeah. Can we vote? Can we vote for that, please? The acceptance of the. Thank you.
I would if I could. There you go.
Thank you. Item 10.4, to consider the cost of the new CCTV system for the cemetery, Appendix J. Do we have any comments or proposal? Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, can I just clarify something here? So we've currently got CCTV in the cemetery, and have we already made the decision that we would replace it, that it needed doing? And this is just a quote to do that replacement work that's already been agreed?
No, I don't think it has been agreed so far. It was it came from the 2 incidents that happened in the cemetery last month, that a quote was sought by the cemetery foreman, but no, it hasn't been agreed so far.
But is there CCTV coverage at the moment that's not adequate, and we need?
I believe there is, but it's not, like you say, not adequate.
Right.
I believe the 2 incidents that occurred, that the current CCTV doesn't cover those particular areas.
Right. So it's an upgrading of the current system following the incidents that we've had. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Any further comments, or is anyone would like to propose that we accept them or not?
Can I just say, Chair?
Councillor Fradgley.
Can I just say, Chair? I do think we need to keep an eye on how much money we're spending and how that accrues, because we're looking at another 2,400, is it, or is it more than that? Is that the sum total?
It is.
This would come out of reserves yet again, would it? So I do think when we're making these decisions, we need to have a running report on what the reserves are and how they're actually falling. Because if we are going to go through yet more difficulties as we are at the moment, we don't know when we're actually going to get back to any sort of normality. We need to make sure that we're not going to be dipping down under the reserves that we should be having, because we've got to make sure the council is.
Totally understand. Is this the only quotation that we've had, by the way? Maybe we should look at it is. Maybe we should look at getting another 2 quotes then, before we make the decision, and see whether we can reduce this cost down. Councillor Howe.
I propose we push this into our budget setting process for next year. I don't know. It doesn't feel. I think it feels important, but doesn't necessarily feel urgent. And I think if that's something we want to do, I think it could go into our budget process, budget setting process for next year.
I would feel more comfortable with that we've taken an overall view of how it fits into our general expenditure.
Do we actually see 2 other quotations first, though, before to see whether we can actually get?
It's Dudley Simpson is I guess is the point to make, and I think that the town clerk thinks is of the view that Dudley Simpson is sort of provides the best value for money. I think it was her words.
I still think we need 3.
But that was specifically about the changes to the town hall to live stream meetings. That might be worth getting additional quotes here.
Councillor Coles.
Thank you. I think, as Councillor Fradley says, I think, you know, we know Dudley Simpson, the rest of it, but I think just to observe due process, we should get additional quotes, just to be sure.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Voss.
I think Councillor Rolfe was waving before me, so
Right.
I respect these proper protocols. Don't like Councillor Rolfe.
Councillor Rolfe.
So actually looking at that quote, can I just be clear? It's because Councillor Fradley said 2,400, but there's two figures underneath that.
Exactly.
That's
It's 3K plus VAT.
Yeah, it's 3K.
Over 3,000.
Yeah.
Plus VAT. I mean, I know VAT is relevant because we claim that back, but so it's you know, it's 3,000. It's a lot of money.
And just in terms of whether or not we need 1, 2 or 3 quotes, there are established thresholds. I don't know if the Deputy Town Clerk can confirm this, where we do have to, as a matter of due course, get a number of quotes. Now, I'm not sure that this hits that threshold and whether we are required to. I'm not saying it wouldn't be good practice, by the way. I'm just saying I don't know that we're required to. And I think £5,000, is that the first
yes,
threshold?
The fact that Dudley Simpson is on our approved suppliers list, and also the fact that the total cost is less than £5,000 means that there is not currently a requirement through council's procedures to seek additional quotation.
So if we want to, certainly moving into the new year, we could suggest that threshold might or might not change. It may or may not help move business along. But I do agree this is not for this year, it's for next year.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Howe's proposal then to move it into next year? Thank you, Councillor Coles. And can we vote on that, please? Thank you. Item 10.5, to note the update on the internal and external works planned for the town hall.
Councillor Howe just have one more point.
Can I just confirm that? Can I just ask the Deputy Town Clerk to? I think it would be good. I think we want to do that CCTV work. I think it'd be good to put it on our budget potentially as its own item, or I've closed off the management accounts. But if there's a suitable existing budget to be increased by £3,000, I think it would be good to see that on there.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Howe. A note on the update of the internal and external works plan for the town hall.
I just have an update from the Finance and Facilities Officer. I'll read it out for you now. She said at the last town hall income and facilities and wellbeing panel on the 30th of July, the panel agreed to recommend the appointment of a contractor to undertake the internal decoration of the town hall. The Finance and Scrutiny Committee adopted these notes and agreed the recommendation. The redecoration of the town hall will commence on the first week of January 2021 for a period of 5 to 8 weeks. All rooms and corridors will be decorated. During December, to prepare for the decoration, the safe removal of all paintings will take place. The paintings will remain safely stored in the town hall. The building consultant has confirmed that listed building consent for the external works planned for the town hall has been received with consent given. An inspection of the stonework via a cherry picker is likely to be carried out by the architect and conservator before the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions? No? Thank you very much. In view of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted in the remainder of the meeting, pursuant to the Public Body Admission to Meetings Act 1960, any members of the press or public present be excluded and be instructed to withdraw. The nature of the business this evening is contractual. Given the current situation with COVID-19 restrictions and the fact this meeting is virtual, this means we will now end the live stream of the meeting. I would like to thank members of the public who have been watching the live stream or who subsequently view the recording for the interest of this committee's activities, and advise the date of the next meeting is the 8th of December 2020.